Well, good morning, Living Hope. As you can see, I guess Colleen called me Pastor Barry's mini-me because we wore blue shirts today. I am not Pastor Barry, but I do have the privilege of sharing with you this morning, and I'm excited to do so. But before I do, I always like giving, because I only share about every 8 weeks or so, a little Benziger update, especially during the time of COVID, about what's going on. Last time, lots of things were going on. This time, it's not a lot. It's not a lot of things going on in the Benziger household. My son is 17 months, and actually, he hasn't learned the word no, but he's definitely learned the word yes. You want to go to the parks? Yes. You want to eat? Yes. Everything is yes. So it's been a lot of fun. We're living in a new house, and he has a lot more space to run and play, and he just doesn't stop. However, he sleeps really well, he eats really well, and he naps really well. So I have no complaints when it comes to my son. However, I do have a complaint with a certain family, and a good chunk of them aren't missing. They're in the front row normally, and that's Derek's family, the Moeller family. They had a birthday party about 10 days ago on a Friday night, and I was invited to the birthday party. Layla, his oldest daughter, said, "Hey, you want to come?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't really want to hang out with 13-year-old girls, no offense." And I was also taking my wife out to dinner that night, things like that. And so I kind of declined the invitation. That was my biggest mistake, I think, because I just so happened around 11 o'clock, I walked outside my door, and I happened to see this, if you could. Wasn't the best situation. That's our brand new house. I'm a youth pastor. I'm used to getting TP'd, but I had gotten TP'd. You can show the quick little video of them doing this. This happened at like 10:30 at night. I just happened to be in the back room. The lights are still on the house. They got us pretty good. So yes, in case you didn't know, I've been a part of this church for a long time, since 1999, and TPing has been like, if you've been around this church for a while, you know that there's been some people on staff who like to TP each other. At this point, they're using their kids to do it now. And I had to, everything within me as a 35-year-old, not to plot against 13-year-olds and go, I'm going to get them back. I was like, no, just going to let them win. So that's the biggest news in the Benziger update, because much like you, I'm sure there's not a whole lot going on right now. I just had to quickly share that and go, hey, you know what? God has been good. We're healthy. My kid is growing up. My wife is great. She's back to work. We're back in the swing of things. And so, but yeah, that was a fun little thing to clean up a couple weeks ago. This morning, though, I want to share with you, and I briefly want to recap with you. If you haven't been a part, we preach in series here at Living Hope, and this is part 5. And the last couple parts where we've been talking about discovering God, essentially recognizing God's voice and discovering how to hear God better. Week 1, we talked about how do I really know if it's God speaking, right? Week 2, we talked about how do we hear God's voice. Week 3, Barry talked about, does the Bible confirm what I'm hearing? Week 4, does it make me more like Jesus? That was last week. And this week, we're going to be examining recognizing God's voice by the use of the church. Does my church family confirm it? Does my church family confirm what I'm hearing from God? And in order to do this, and in order to kind of understand where I'm going with this, I'm not normally a 3-part sermon guy. Like, that's a stereotypical thing in churches where the guy has 3 points and he wants you to learn. Today, I happen to fall into that category. The 3 being, I want to talk to you about the doctrine of the church, because I feel like we need to understand a little bit about what's going on with that. That we're not meant to be alone, and that we're supposed to have good, godly relationships. And looking at those 3 things will help us understand that we can hear God's voice through our church body. But before we do that, we got to, like I said, talk about what the doctrine of the church is. What's interesting is, I don't know about you, but I don't actually own a dictionary in our house. If I do, I can't find it. So instead of this is the world we live in now, instead of actually, looking up, I actually get on Google and I write in the word church. And Google, this is Google defining it. Type the word church, it hits search. The first thing that shows up is this right here. A church, a building used for public Christian worship. And my response is, okay, Google, you're wrong. Or at least that's not what God intended the church to be. Not going to lie, it's probably how the world views the church. It's probably a good worldly definition of the church. It's not just a building. It's not just a building. It's not just a place where we come, shake a few hands, listen to some songs, and a goofy guy gets up here and speaks, and we're supposed to leave somehow changed for a couple minutes. Like, that's not what the church was meant to be. It's completely wrong. Google has it wrong. And if you happen to stumble upon this video as you're watching at home for whatever reason this morning, you need to realize and wake up and understand that the church is more than just a building. The church is more than just a building. It's meant to be a family. It's meant to be a family. In 1 Peter this morning, chapter 2, it says this: "You are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy." That's the definition of the church. It didn't say the word church in there at all, but that's what he was talking about. That's what the church is, a family set apart for God, God's possession. The Bible also Jesus talks about calling the church the bride of Christ. It's an interesting picture that we hear, and the church is meant to be family. It's a people group, not a building. Chosen people, family. We're family. And I'm sorry, I think Olive Garden's got their slogan wrong too, because when you're here, you're family. Not at Olive Garden. In case you didn't know, that was their slogan. I like that place. And sometimes we need to collectively work on being a family. I don't like the church bash. This is not my heart. I love the church. I love this church. I love the church corporately. And I feel like sometimes people like to get up there and bash the church and go, "You need to do better. The church needs to be better." And I'm not saying that in a sense, but I don't want a church bash. But I want to say this, is that we do need to understand and know that this place is a family. It's a place for new people to come. It's a place for people to come and feel safe, to feel security, to be accepted. And I talked about last time I shared that we've lost home field advantage. And I feel like a part of that is because churches around the nation and around the world struggle with this idea that the church is a family. It needs to be a family. And I understand that for a lot of people, that's a bad picture because they don't come from perfect families. They come from broken families and just grossness. I understand that. But as a church, we need to be a little bit better in that regard of our acceptance. This isn't a part of my notes, but I do know, and I've heard many testimonies of young men who come out of gang life, being in gangs on the streets, and coming to churches, and God saving them, and they're now a part of the family. And them leaving Sunday morning and going, "Oh, that was it? Where's my family at?" Because the reason why they were so attracted to gang life is because once they were in, and they were with those people probably 12 to 16 hours a day. It's pretty sad when gang life does it better than us at times. We need to work on being a family. And when God established his church, it was also in this insight to not have us be alone. I mean, going all the way back to Genesis, God creates the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1, Genesis 2, right here, verse 18, says this: "The Lord God said, it is not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." Of course, this was talking about Eve. But in general, God is declaring, listen, you're not supposed to be alone. You're supposed to be connected, a part of the family. Relationship is that key component to churches and what the doctrine of the church is for. If you're here at this church and you call this place your church and you're a part of this body, know this, that 1 Corinthians mentions that every member has a part and serves a different purpose in the body. Some might be hands and foots, and there's this weird thing like, oh, the hand can't say to the foot, you move this way or do this thing. It's an interesting story in Corinthians, but what it does point to is that we are all one family, and we all have different purposes in that family. And so, I need to remind you also, because I deal in youth ministry a lot. I deal a lot with this idea that, they come to youth group and they spend, 6 to 7 years with me, and by the time they're 18, 19, they go away to college or junior college or army or this or that, and they walk away from God. And I have conversations with them in their 20s, and they go, I didn't get anything from that. I went to church with you, I listened to you, we did the music, we went to all the concerts and roller coasters and fun and this and that, but I didn't get anything from you. I didn't get anything from it. I didn't learn. Why? The better question that I always respond with, well, what did you give? Because I firmly believe this. If the church is a body, that means we all have a purpose in this body. And that you have to give too. It can't just be take. It can't just be take. I know that's a hard message to hear and to understand and know, and I'm not trying to bash the church. But it needs to be said in the sense of, we also need to be able to give, not just take when it comes to the church. Now, there's going to be seasons, I understand, where you're going to take a little bit more than you give and vice versa. Like this time of year with COVID and all of this stuff, there's not a lot of give that can be had in the church. We're not doing big events. There's not a lot going on. I understand. I get that. But your overall opinion of, I'm not really liking church because I'm not getting anything from it, I challenge the idea of maybe you're not connected to the body, and two, maybe you're not actually giving. And I'm not talking financially, I'm just talking giving. Just come in and, oh yeah, okay, church, okay, cool. And so I challenge that idea. What kind of family member would you be if Memorial Day, 4th of July, Thanksgiving, all the big holidays where these barbecues and can you bring a dish? Can you bring a dish? What kind of family member would you be if you showed up to those barbecues empty-handed, ate the food, had fun, left, and I'll see you in 6 months at the next one? You gotta give. You gotta give. You gotta make sure you're a part of the family and helping it grow. The reason why the church is so important to that it's not all take, so that we can also learn how to give, because it serves a purpose in relationships. Galatians 6 says this, brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in sin, who live by the Spirit should restore that guilty person. But watch yourself, or you also may be tempted. That's the church's purpose right there. It's to help restore. The church's job is to help restore, to bear one another's burdens. Burden being something too heavy that you can't carry on your own. An example being a piano. Can't carry a piano on my own. The church is supposed to help others do that. That's what family does. I know that during times of hardship and trouble, that I have a list of quite a few people that if I get into something that I can't handle and I need help with, not only is my church family there to help, but I have physical family as well, and they're here to help me carry those burdens. I think it's interesting too that there's a warning in that verse that, hey, you got to watch out for yourself also, that you're not tempted. It's a warning there. The Beatles kind of got it wrong with their lyrics when it says, I get by with my help from my little friends, right? Because the next line is highly not church related at all. But they do understand that they needed friends and they're not meant to be alone. And the church family serves that purpose. Ephesians 3 says this, his intent was that now, through the church, the manifold wisdom of God should be made known to the rulers and the authorities in the heavenly realm. The purpose of the church is to restore, and the purpose right here being that his intent was that now, through the church, the manifold wisdom of God should be made known to everyone. That's so good. And that's what the church needs to be. And that I could spend hours. Like if Pastor Barry said, hey, we're going to do a sermon on doctrine, I'll be like, oh, can I take the doctrine of the church? And we could talk about that for hours. That's not what the overall sermon series is about, but I needed to lay the groundwork because you need to understand that it's a family. It's more than just a building. It's a place in which hopefully you feel accepted, safe, and that you can share. And along with that, the idea of when God actually speaks to you, and you're not sure, hey, is that from God? that you have family members to talk to about that. And that's exactly what I mean by hopefully you are not alone. The church, being a family, means you should be able to share what God is talking to you about. Good family lets you talk about any and everything, especially if you think you're hearing from God. If you need help discerning that it's from God, the church is a good place to go, hey, I was feeling like God wants me to do this. What do you think? And if you got some good brothers and sisters in Christ, it's a perfect place to hear. You know what? That's a good idea. It's a great idea. It's a step in the right direction. Now, I think it's interesting that when that happens, and that's what the church is meant to be for, and that's what family's there for, if I came to my family and said, hey, I have this idea, I would expect them to give me some sort of advice. And that's what the church is also designed to do. But what's interesting is sometimes when God's talking to you, you might think to yourself, you know what? I don't think I want to share that God's talking to me about that. And if that's the case, if you're worried about sharing it with your church family, I'd like to tell you that you're probably not hearing from God. It's like, I'm hearing from God that I'm supposed to murder Pastor Barry so he gets life insurance. Like, guess what? That's not from God. If I don't want to share that with anyone, it's not from God. Yeah, Colleen. Colleen begs to differ. That's why I said the life insurance thing, Colleen. And what's so interesting about that is if you're not willing to share what God has placed on your heart, then you probably already know that it's not from God. I really believe that to be true, especially in this church family where there's a lot of acceptance. What's interesting too is that sometimes we let our pride get in the way. In the back of your mind, you know that it's wrong. And you go and you seek after that one person that hopefully is going to say yes. And at the end of the day, if you can't find any other follower to confirm your idea, guess what? It's wrong. It's wrong. Because I know that God wants to give you advice, and he wants to give it through people. Our own pastor spends a good chunk of his week listening to people and helping them out and counseling them. He wants to save us from heartaches. It says in Proverbs 11, verse 9, with their mouth, the godless destroy their neighbors, but through the knowledge, the righteous escape. God wants to save you from time being wasted and painfulness. He wants you to share life with each other enough to the point where you can learn from each other's mistakes. That's why I like this church, because I learned from all the goofballs before me. And all the mess ups and the mistakes they've made. He also wants to save you from embarrassment and your reputation being ruined. I firmly believe that. And I feel like when it comes to hearing from God and talking to your church family, it will help you get rid of some of those things. And I don't know about you, I could use a little bit of help in those 4 things. People don't share what they're hearing from God because they have this excuse of, I don't have any godly friends. Or they themselves don't like listening. Sometimes people operate under this fashion too, very similar to my 17-month-old. I want to do what I want to do. We're doing our best as parents trying not to use the word no all the time, but I feel like it would just be a broken record until we're trying other means and things like that, and it is so hard because at the end of the day, if he wants to do it, he's going to try to do it. And don't get me wrong, parenting's been a blast and a ton of fun, but in that situation, when you're dealing with people like that, or you yourself are like that, you're gonna probably experience some time, loss of time, some painful things, probably some embarrassment, and your reputation could be ruined. My son right now loves to grab the pots and pans out of the thing. And like we had the baby lock, and then he happened to be, I swear he's Hulk. He just broke the lock right off, and so he just can get to the pots, and he carries them everywhere. And there's been times when he's drop them on his foot. Dare I say, drop them on dad's foot. Where he's done things that are just not what would be what we would call smart, right? Well, he does what he wants to do. He does what he wants to do. And we as a church, we need to build relationships, just being flat and honest with you, with people that I call pre-Christians, people that don't know God yet. Because they're going to want to do what they want to do. And they're going to end up hurting themselves, wasting time, being embarrassed. Their reputation's going to be damaged. And when it comes to hearing from God, too, we'll talk about this. It's a good way to exercise that muscle for you to hear better, is when you get to speak life into these pre-Christians. I also would say this, the third thing that I said I would mention today is we need to grow good, godly relationships. And this is where I want to spend the remainder of our time, because I personally believe in order to use the church to hear from God, to help you hear from God, you need to have some good, godly relationships. I see one being a crucial factor, and that's small groups. We at a church, when COVID's not around, we do small groups around here. We connect that way. There's Bible studies throughout the course of the week. This building is not just used only on Sunday mornings. And it's interesting. And because small groups are such a good and a great place to connect, because you normally find some like-minded people. This is my commercial for if you're not in a small group, find a small group. And you're like, hey, Josh, how can I do that? How can I find a small group during COVID? I'm sitting here telling you right now, when I have Betsy Stowe, who I love to death, Betsy, say, hey, Josh, I need some help because I want to do a Bible study online, and she has figured out, the not tech-savvy person that she is, to do a Bible study in a small group online, it means you can do it too. You could figure it out. Be connected, stay in your small group. We have this amazing resource, this is another plug. We have this amazing resource that Betsy's using called Right Now Media, which actually lets you, it's pretty much Netflix for sermons and Bible studies. And if you would like an invitation, we can get you those. And what she's doing is actually, with the Right Now Media, holding Zoom sessions while playing these videos. Because people aren't feeling comfortable enough to come down for Bible study. But she's figured out a way to do it. And I'm sitting here telling you, you can too. And small groups are this important, to the point where Proverbs 11 says this, 11 verse 14. For lack of guidance, a nation falls, but victory is won through many advisors. And that's what small groups are. Other people to help you out. Other people to help you out. I also would say this, don't go out and find a small group full of yes man. Don't go find a small group that's like, oh, you know what? Yeah, we're like-mindedness. But at the same time, I feel like God is telling me this. Don't go out and find the small group that actually agrees with the facts and what you feel like you're hearing from God. Don't go find the one and leave the 99. That's not what that sermon was about or that song that we just sang was about. It's not going to find small groups that are full of yes people, but people that are going to genuinely talk and discuss and be real with you. Another person that I could quickly highlight in our body is Will. Will has a group that they used to meet in person, but now they don't even do that because they all live in different areas, and they still once a week pretty much are meeting over Skype, and they have been for 5, 6, 7 years, right? Every Monday. Because they found that small group where they can be real, open, and honest and share what God is talking to them about and what's going on, and causing them to grow. What I'm really talking about here in those relationships, because after you have your small group, another relationship, good godly one that we can be working on is mentorships. I know you're sitting here going, oh, well, Josh, for the most part, we're older than you. And mentor is traditionally someone you look up to. Yes, the upward mentorship, that's what it really is called, someone you look up to, someone you want to be like. But I'd like to challenge you guys, if you can't think of one or two or maybe even 3 people in your life that you would consider upward mentors, is find one. Find someone you can trust, that you do look up to, that you go, I want to be like them when I grow up. I have quite a few in my life, and I love that, and I feel like it helps me so much. Because when I get into a bind or when I'm not sure if it's God talking to me, they're one of the first people I can go, hey, I'm really feeling like God is calling me to do this. What do you think? and I get a response. That's what upward mentors are for. They're for people to speak life into you. I do think, though, that your upward mentors need to be rooted in God. I run into people all the time. They're like, oh, yeah, I really look up to this person. And they're normally not rooted in God. So I challenge you to find a good godly mentor. Think Barry Tuggle is way better than Tony Robbins, is what I'm really saying. Proverbs 15 says this, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. You want to be successful at hearing from God? Have some upward mentors in your life. Now, in ministry, I get a lot of questions dealing with junior hires, and one of the biggest questions I always get is, what if? What if this happened instead in the Bible? What if? Right now, I'm getting a lot of questions in Genesis because that's where we're going through of the what if. Well, what if this happened, and why'd God, and there's I get it. They're all rightfully so. My what if question that I'd probably ask them is, what would Adam and Eve have done if they had an upward mentor to keep them from that? Now, I understand. It's more fun to play that what if game. And it happens all the time, and you'd be lying to yourself if you've never asked the what if question when listening to a Bible study or even a sermon. But you have to know and understand that's what those upward mentors are for. To help ground you, to keep you in your word, to help you understand the Bible, to help grow your relationship with God, and to help you hear from God. There's another critical mentorship that helps us discover God's voice. I call them peer mentorships. Peer mentorships. People that are kind of, in that same age group, same amount of wisdom, doing the same exact thing. The best example of those actually being what I talked about earlier in small groups. Small groups are a great example of peer mentorships. Kind of on the same playing field. And I know you might be sitting there going, okay, small groups is good. I also think, dare I say, friendships. And the last one that I really dare to say are good peer mentorships is actually this idea of your spouse. Your spouse. It's an amazing thing that has happened to me where I go, hey, Jocelyn, I'm hearing from God about this. It's amazing how awesome her responses can be. Check out what Proverbs 20 says on this. The purpose of a person's hearts are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out. Who's got better insight than your spouse? Who has better insight than your spouse? When I'm hearing from God in the matter, I like to bring it up to her, what's going on, and there's normally no gray area. The kid gloves don't exist normally in a marriage. Hopefully they don't. Hopefully you have a genuine where you can be open and honest. So find yourself in peer mentorship relationships. Friendships are good for this too. Find yourself a good godly friend that can be open and honest with you. The third one is traditionally called downward mentorship, but I really don't like the idea of it, so I call it you're the mentorship. You're the mentor in this situation, and I'd like to challenge you guys to understand and know that you yourself can be a mentor to any and everyone. I'm not saying go out of your way and be like, Josh, you got a bunch of youth kids, let me mentor them. I think there's probably, there's some wisdom to telling you that, like, Michael Cooper, as we call him Coop around here, does that, and he's amazing at it, but it's not for everyone. It's just not. But I do think you guys should understand and know that there are people that you need to be mentoring to help the church family. You want to talk about helping hearing from God better? And does your church family confirm it? Well, if you exercise that muscle on helping others hear from God, when God talks to you, hopefully you hear from God better. And I see this as something important, especially if you're a grandparent or a parent. It says here in Proverbs 22, start your children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it. The importance of mentorship is huge. And that means any and everyone in this room. Now, I mentioned it's not all give around here, it's take. Or sorry, the opposite way. I mentioned that sometimes it's too much take and not enough give. And in this situation, what I'm talking about here is the give. is to give. My three application points, and then we'll get out of here this morning, is find your place in church. Know that it's not all take. You can't just be a taker. You got to give. Number two, that you're not supposed to be alone. You're part of the body. You're connected. You're in this family. Find a small group. If there isn't a small group that you like or it doesn't meet for your time, start one. We'll help you. Number three, find yourself in upward, peer, and downward mentor relationships. If you want to help, if you want to hear from God, help others hear from God. This morning, as we close, my challenge of those three things, I hope that they weigh on your heart to be thinking about them over the next week or so. And how? That you have a family that is here for you. You have a family that is here for you, that is wanting and able to help you hear more from God or discern the things from God. And in this family, we don't just let you come and take from us. You're going to have to give too. Would you pray with me? God, we love you for this morning. We love you for everything you're doing in our lives. We thank you for the fact that you do speak to us. Over the last couple of weeks, we have talked about the many different ways, and sometimes, God, it's hard to discern and discover if that is something from you or if it's from ourselves or somewhere else. God, I am so grateful for the fact that I have a church family that will help me and guide me into knowing whether or not that word was from you. God, I pray that you continue to speak to your people in this room, and that you would help us not just take, but also give. Help us be connected to the body and realize that we're not supposed to be alone, and that this church, Living Hope, is called to be family, and in those families that we would develop mentorship relationships. You are so good, God. We love you so much. I pray all these things in your name. Amen.